Frank, you took out a professional promoter's licence with the Border Control in December 1980. As I understand it, it wasn't necessarily a role you actively pursued so much as you were gaining a lot of momentum with your NBC so-called unlicensed promotions, and you were actually invited to take out a licence.
Yeah, that's right. Back then I'd run a number of shows outside the Bulls jurisdiction. We formed our own organisation called the National Boxing Council.
Yes.
And eventually I had an invitation and I decided to take it up.
So, it wasn't. You decided to take it up. Did you ever imagine you'd be as successful and enduringly so as you've been?
No, I didn't even set out to be a boxing promoter, really. Some things happened by accident, but I got involved, I got bitten by the bug, as a lot of people do in boxing, and from there I just managed to, strive to do the best I could, because whatever I get involved with, I always try to make sure it's the best, and that's what I did, and put together some big fights. It was very competitive. I was sort of basically having the door shut in my face everywhere, and cartel, and I wasn't willing to allow that to happen from my perspective. So what I did, I just got my head down and got on with my business.
It's been well documented that your first promotion lost a lot of money. You had this novel idea of putting on two fringe American light heavyweight contenders, Jerry the Bull Martin and Otis Gordon, and I believe I read one time you said, I thought it was going to be like a Thad Spencer versus the Otis Martin, a classic in 1968, and it didn't pan out that way?
No, at the time it was going to be for the North American Boxing Federation title, and we had sanction for that, but because the board's regulation then, which I weren't too acquainted with, that you couldn't put championship fights, televised championship fights on unless you promoted a certain amount of fights. I fell outside that criteria, so therefore that we lost the tag. The fight, on paper, everybody thought it was going to be a great fight because they were two really, decent fighters. But cut a long story short, it wasn't to be, and it wasn't very well attended. And not only wasn't it not well attended, it was pretty much a boring fight.
And yet, you were not remotely deterred, of course.
Sorry?
You weren't remotely put off by that first experience.
I mean, I lost money, but that's show business. A lot of things went on behind the scenes. A lot of obstacles that the British Boxing Board of Control in those days put up because they favoured the cartel group. But the bottom line was, I learnt from it and sort of went back, licked my wounds, learnt from my mistakes, and then got it back together again, and off we went.
Your first signing, in fact, was Keith Wallace, the Liverpool flyweight, ex-Olympian.
Signed young Keith, signed three fighters up who were in the England team. I think it was
Jimmy Price?
Jimmy Price, no, not Jimmy Price, it was Stevie Johnson and Jimmy Duncan. I signed those three guys from the England team. Took a couple of kids over from the NBC days with me, Gary Knight, Steve Jarman, and that was the sort of nucleus of my stable then.
When you came on the scene, you've already alluded to the fact that the cartel, Mickey Duff, Mike Barrett, Jarvis Astaire, Terry Lawless, very much a stranglehold on British boxing at the time. There was an opening for you, it would seem, because you were a bit the enfant terrible of British boxing at the time, and you took a few more risks, and their formula was getting a bit staid. True?
No, not really. I think what it was is that, first of all, there were no venues in London in those days. The only two venues was the Royal Albert Hall and Wembley. Wembley held at down stage about 10,000. Royal Albert Hall is a 5,000-seat arena, but it has the benches there, so you've only got about 3,500 tickets that you can sell, and they both had exclusive agreements with the guys in the cartel, so I had to go and find the venues to promote in, trying to get, take it outside of a town hall situation. So Bloomsbury Crest Hotel, Alexandra Palace over, who eventually I went there to do something. But the bottom line was that I had a lot of enthusiasm. I loved the game, and I was bitten by the bug. And listen, good fights are good fights. Public, whether I'm promoting or somebody else is promoting, that's all the public are interested in, seeing good fights. You dress them up, so we got Rancard girls started bringing music in and all that stuff to try and sort of bring it into the. You
kind of started that, didn't you? Because you were doing that on the unlicensed promotions, and that was something in their more kind of classic kind of presentation. They'd never dreamed of that, would they?
That's correct. So there was lots, so we did all that, and it was quite, good fun. A change of way of doing things, but at the end of the day, all the public really, we all like the razzmatazz and all the dressing it up, but at the end of the day, it's the fights that matter. So I put together quite a few competitive fights, won a lot of purse bids, and managed then to get hold of a TV deal with ITV.
When you talk about putting on competitive fights, do you feel that you were more likely to take risks then than you are now? You've become very established, or is your philosophy the same?
No, it's the same thing. I mean, a competitive fight I put on last year was Nathan Cleverly and Kovalov. That was a competitive fight. You have to give the public one.
It wasn't a competitive fight as it turned out, but it was a risky fight.
Well, Nathan at that stage had 6 defences of his world title.
Yeah.
He was a world champion, and Kovalov was a new guy on the block. We got it wrong. It turned out wrong, and it didn't happen that night. But that happens in boxing. But on paper, it was a competitive fight.
Yeah. When you think of the span of your career, what do you now know? What is the most important thing that you now know that you didn't know when you started?
You never know everything. Every day you've got to learn. One thing you can't depend on is, and it's a sad thing to say, but is loyalty as far as sometimes as boxers concerned. And if you don't, one thing you got in this sport, you're never going to be disappointed about being disappointed, because that's how it is.
I believe Mickey Duff said, "Don't fall in love with a fighter because you will be disappointed." But
it's not a question of falling in love. I mean, that's his phrase. You can get close to guys, you build them up, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I mean, there's other guys there, and there are a long list of guys that I loved working with. Dennis Andrews, Enzo Maccanelli, fantastic fighter. I'm not trying to think off the top of my head, people.
I was going to ask you about the fighters you remain most fond of.
But there's quite a few of them. I mean, over the years, and it'd be really, it'd be a huge list. But I mean, they spring to mind of being guys that who I had good relationships with. There's been relationships that have been fractious. Nigel Benn went off into the sunset and then came back to me, and in fact in his autobiography he said that he should never have left.
He said what?
He should never have left.
Yeah, sometimes people regret it.
Nassim Hamid was the same. He went off and done his thing, yet he went on done a documentary and said that he should have, one thing he regretted was that, and so on. But look, not all marriages work. No. And so sometimes they work, sometimes they don't.
On the subject of fractious relationships, everybody who follows boxing knows your first world champion was Terry Marsh. Now, I'd like to ask you, if you want to talk about the early days of that relationship. Most chiefly, did you recognise that kind of potential in Terry at the outset?
I'm very short and sweet with that. He won a world title under me, defended it in his hometown under my promotion. I put the money up, that happened. And I don't want to talk about any more about Terry Marsh.
That really is the end of it. We alluded to guys like Naz. Three of the greatest superstars in British boxing over the last 50 years. You steered towards their world titles and several defences in Prince Naseem Hamed, Joe Kazag and Ricky Hatton. What does it feel like? Is it very hard when people leave and perhaps regret it? Is it very hard to root for those people, root for those fights ever again?
No, as far as Naz is concerned, my contract's expired with him, and we had his last fight was against Wayne McCulloch, and that was at Atlantic City, and I told him and told his father, who was a nice bloke who was alive at the time, that was it. I couldn't deal with any more of the interference of his brothers, and at the time, Naz's obnoxious behaviour, it become, who needed that. So,
Was he starting to believe his own hype?
Well, he always believed in himself, and that was part of his success. But it was the way he was treating people around him, which I didn't like. And we came back from. I was actually coming home. Brendan Ingle persuaded me to stay. I was going to leave, and cut a long story short, his father asked me to stay, so he felt that it would upset the situation there, which I did, and then came back to the UK, and I never ever picked the phone up to him again.
Okay. I want to do a few potted questions, and we'll finish with a little bit, bring us up to date about what's happening now in your career. The greatest British fighter you ever worked with?
Well, it's a tough one, because I've been worked with some really good fighters. I mean, Joe Kawasaki obviously stands out as far as achievements concerned, and could have been a much better fighter had he not withdrawn from quite a few fights. There were a lot of personal issues going on in the background. His training, not his father's fault, his fault. The way he looks after his hands and so forth. If that had been dealt with better, then I think he'd have even been a better fighter. So he stands out as the best. Naz could have been the best. He had more talent, I think, than all of them. He had tremendous natural talent. He was a fighter who I don't feel fulfilled his legacy, which was a great shame. Nigel Benn was a very entertaining fighter. There was a time when he was top of his game. He was the one that all the British public liked. There are a number of them. Ricky Hatton become a man of the people. I remember the first fight he had for me at Wythenshawe, he sold 3 tickets, but worked hard.
Did he really? Yeah.
But he worked very hard at promotion. He was good to work with, and funny, we've been talking, had quite a few conversations lately, and it's another one where somebody got in the middle, created a situation that didn't exist, which truth always comes out in time, and it came out in time with him, as to what was one of the problems in his career.
Yeah. The best fight you've ever promoted?
The best fight I was involved with was also the most tragic fight, and that was Ben and McClellan. For the obvious reasons of the terrible tragic situation that it left him in, Gerald McClellan. It was an awful scenario, but up until that was happening, it was compelling. It was compelling. I mean, I've never seen the press were all standing on their seats and cheering. And it's a funny thing with the benefit of hindsight, which I know is a useless thing to have. I can remember looking at him in the corner during that fight, kept blinking, and I'm thinking now, what would have happened if Emmanuel Stewart had actually been in the corner? Would he have picked up that there was a problem? Instead of what a lot of fighters do, doing things on the cheap, bringing these guys in and playing them, I mean, when I say chump change, I mean real chump change, and you get what you get out of it. Yeah,
one feels almost guilty watching that fight again, but the fact remains it was a great fight. Who was that one fighter? We'll talk about a prospect who perhaps didn't fulfil his potential. The one fighter who broke your heart. Not loyalty, but just looked like he had the world at his feet, but it didn't happen.
Tony Collins.
Tony Collins.
Yeah, I thought young Tony Collins, George's brother, I thought he should have been an absolute huge star. But unfortunately, you can have talent, but you got to put hard work in. You got to be dedicated. And he got into too much trouble outside the ring, and it was a totally wasted talent. He sparred once with Chris Eubank, and he was only about 17, and stood Chris Eubanks on his head.
You're talking to the Collins brothers. You just made me think of another question quickly. How did you feel the night at the Grosvenor House Hotel when it was George Collins' coming out party versus Gary Stretch, and you signed him anyway? You were going to sign him. How did you feel when he got done in a round?
Well, I was quite disappointed. What I was disappointed about is they didn't listen to me. I said, "Why are you doing this fight?" I said, "We signed a deal. You don't need it. You've won. I mean, at that stage, you'd won more national titles than any other amateur. What are you doing it for?" But anyway, it happened, and we just moved on, and that was it.
The best trainer that you've observed in your role as a promoter?
It's very difficult because, and it's no disrespect to trainers. Fighters, they say fighters make trainers. If you've got a good fighter to work with, then as a trainer, you should be able to improve with him. Yeah. Over the years, it's not so much a trainer, it's coaches, and I think there aren't many good coaches around. Yeah, and that is the distinction. Let's be honest. Most guys get physically fit, especially in the era we live in now. They're more conscious of the fitness level. It's the coaching techniques. They have dietitians now, but I'm a big believer. Whatever things help a boxer in his career, and dietitians sometimes become the be and end all of it. It's common sense. If you eat the right food, if you've got Rolls Royce, you don't put diesel in it. Yeah. You put the best petrol in it. And if you're a Rolls Royce fighter, then you should have the best guys around you. I just like to see a bit more coaching. And I think from the amateur point, what makes it more difficult maybe for some of the guys now is because of the head guards, the point scoring. It's all about speed. They
are getting rid of that. You've probably heard.
Of course, I hear that, and it'd be interesting. So sometimes makes it a little bit more of a different transition from being amateur to professional than it used to be. The other side of the coin is boxers today fight for a title after 10 fights. You go back to Alan Minter's day, and Simpsons and all them. They were 20-odd, 24, 25 fights before they fought.
Let's be honest, before the advent of the WBO, Nigel Benn and Chris Eubank would have been fighting each other for perhaps British, Commonwealth and European titles like Minter and Finnegan.
Yeah, that could be, that was true. And, when I started out, there were only 2 organisations. Then it was the IBF and then the WBO.
Yeah. You've promoted a who's who of British boxing and also worked with some great American stars. Is there one fight? Let's talk in your timescale of career rather than just fantasy. In your timescale of career, who would you most like to have promoted that you never did?
Sugar Ray Leonard.
That's a very good choice.
For me, he's the best fighter I've seen in my time in boxing.
I have to utterly agree with you. And I was lucky enough to get to sit down with him once. It was a special time. OK, let's move towards the present day. We're at a press conference today for your upcoming show on Saturday night. Tyson Fury and Derek Chisora co-headlining the bill. It is no secret there's been an exodus of certain fighters in your stable. It always happens, as you say, but it's happened on a more increasing basis over the last couple of years, and the man on the street or the casual fight fan perceives this notion of some changing of the guard and power shift. Yourself, Eddie Hearn, Matchroom.
I don't quite agree with that. You know, a few fighters have left, and when they say they've left, some have not chose to renew their contract. Kell Brook, I told his father, as long as he was involved in his side, in being involved in his career, I no longer wish to promote him. That's what happened there.
Yeah.
A few other fighters, as you say, have left. Cut some, as I say, contracts expired. The other side of the coin, look how many guys have stepped across and come and, you know, and re-signed. We signed, I think, in the last, probably in the last 5-6 months, I would say at least 6 or 7 good quality fighters. So I'm quite pleased with that, and we'll be announcing another one in 2 weeks' time. So, you know, it swings and roundabouts. I remember in, was it sort of about the 90s, I can remember all the fighters leaving Barry Hearn, all of them, to a man, and coming over the other side of the street, all the guys he had. That happens in boxing. There's nothing unusual in that. It's where we are. It's all about delivering, you know, and we constantly deliver. And what people should understand is our success story in the last, this into the 3rd year now, has been Box Nation. You know, we've actually created a TV channel out of nothing, a TV channel that's shown the best of boxing from around the world. It's going to be listed as a public company later this month. That is a success story. Whatever way you want to look at it, that is a tremendous success story. And I don't understand how anybody doesn't look at that and focus on that. I'm not beholden to any TV company. I don't have to go cap in hand to Barney Francis at Sky or anybody.
Do you much prefer this way of working than the old days?
Of course I do. It's much better for me. I mean, I'm in control of my own destiny as such. I'm not being, you know, to a whim of somebody, whether they like a fight, or amateur matchmakers who sometimes tell me this guy should be fighting that guy and coming up with impossible situations.
So you've got more autonomy and freedom.
Yeah, I've got more freedom, and it's what I've always tried to do from day one. That was the direction I was always trying to move towards, and finally it's happened.
I'm asking this next question, and nearly a final question, simply to give you a chance to address this if you want to. It's not of massive interest to me because I'm interested in boxing, but there is some of the claims that people who've jumped ship, some people are claiming non-payment, as Ricky Burns has been, or manager's been quite vocal about it. Do you have anything you wish to say about people's claims about payments of boxers?
Why haven't they sued me?
Well, I did wonder why get an online Facebook petition.
Well, first of all, let's talk about Alec Morrison. Yeah, you want to talk about Alex Morrison? Let's cut through it. I won a libel action against him.
Yes.
Okay, 2 weeks ago. Won the libel, the damages and cost are being assessed, and he'll have to pay them. Or if he doesn't pay them, I will bankrupt him. Simple as that. That's the situation. Yeah. Alex Morrison is continuing to do the stuff he's doing, and he has got another writ heading his way. Now, I can't stop him from being stupid. If he wants to do that, that's up to him. And anybody else, by the way, who's involved in that will also suffer the same consequences. Yeah. Where is the contract that he refers to? Why has anybody asked him, where is this contract that he keeps referring to? Number one. Number two is, I've not heard Ricky Burns say one word about this. And remember, I'm suing Ricky Burns for substantial damages and substantial damages. So that's going on. Where would Alex Morrison have been without me? Putting not his money, he comes from Scotland, not me. I put the money up in Scotland for Ricky Burns, not to just fight for the title once, but for the title on 2 occasions. I put my money in my pocket, not Alex Morrison. You'd think that he was the guy behind this. All he did was along for the ride. He never made one single match. I made all the matches, me. Yes. I was the joint manager of Ricky Burns. Yes. Okay? If people want to listen to all this crap, and we see all this in other areas of life on Facebook and Twitter, we see all that stuff, they want to go down that road, that's fine. At the moment, I've won an action. As soon as the judge determines that action, then I can then determines the cost and the damages. We will then see where we go. And the fact of the matter is, I've won the case. Why didn't he show up in court? And why phone me crying on my phone 2 weeks ago, crying that he can't sleep, and if...
Well, Alex Morrison.
Yeah, I got it on my phone, I'll show it to you. You want to put it on a... Rang me, I didn't ring him, I saved it. Yeah, you've got it. Why I'm doing this. And why, when he gets on my telephone, crying to me on the telephone, that he can't... hang on, let me find... That he can't sleep at night, and if I settle with him, he won't give evidence in the case, the Ricky Burns case. Why would you do that?
So
What sort of person that? Well, he's just a fraud.
Okay,
Alex Morrison, 9:59, called me. This is I took the photograph off the camera.
You see that?
Yeah, there it is.
There you
So
go.
that way, see.
The camera.
Alex Morrison rang me. I didn't ring him. That's an incoming call from him.
Yeah.
All right, on there.
Yeah.
That's it.
Looking
Not
to make
rang me
peace.
once. Not looking to make peace. Looking to get yourself off the hook.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a lot of difference about making peace and trying to get yourself it. So now he's a woman scorned. He's been beaten in court. He's had his arse kicked in court because he lied.
Yeah.
He tried to settle me. Even he changed his solicitors 4 times. And obviously, I don't know what happened, but the fact he changed his solicitor 4 times tells me his solicitor said that he hasn't got too much of a case, and that's why he's wound up where he is. And now all he's doing now is digging a bigger and bigger hole, and he's coming out with a lot of crap, a lot of things that he says on there, and now all it's libelous. And as I said to you earlier, that's the next action he's going to get. But in the meantime, once the cost and the damages are assessed, the first thing will happen then is that Alex Morrison will have to pay him. And if he doesn't pay them, then he will be sued. And I'm asking Alex Morrison now to produce a contract to show me, produce that contract to you or anybody to say, to back up his action. Because there isn't one. There isn't one.
Last question. What do you hope to achieve that you haven't already achieved?
I think, I'm quite pleased the way things have gone. I've managed and promoted more champions than any other manager, and promoted more world champions than any other British manager, in all the divisions. I just want this TV channel to be a real success, and just to ensure that we keep delivering to the fans not only good quality matches as far as the promoter's concerned, but I hope that Box Nation continues to show the best fights from around the world and to continue to help the sport grow.
Okay, Frank, I'm very grateful for your time today. I'd just like to say that you and I initially came into contact because you phoned me out of the blue because I'd annoyed you with a certain upload, which we won't talk about. But I'm not too old.
Was that the one the other week?
Yeah.
Oh, go on, carry on.
I'm not too old or proud to say that you, Dave, even though you weren't in the best of moods about it, you gave me a bit of a Jim will fix it moment by calling me to complain, and I'm very grateful for your time today.
It's all very well. I just want to make this point. It's all very well people doing. Hold it. That book that you refer to. People don't know that I sued the book, not just me, Mickey Duff, Bert McCarthy, and about 3 other people, and got substantial damages, and the book was pulped.
Yeah.
And if people want to keep using that, I can't stop you writing something or saying something. All I can do is afterwards try to put it right.
Thanks very much for your time today. I much appreciated. Thank you. Cheers.